Okay, well, I'm going to change the window. So if you think you might have a question, you can, it works on your phone too, by the way. You can just go there and leave it open. And if you have a question, you can put it in there. I want to go to the Blackboard for this week. This week is week 7 already. Hey, there's only 15 weeks, so that means we're almost halfway finished with the semester. If you can believe that. This is our first week on poetry. You should have read a little bit in your book about poetry as kind of like a, I don't know, like a refresher or going over some basic terms. I'm going to do some things during the lesson today to talk a little bit about poetry, but I didn't want to make a real heavy assignment from the textbook or other assignment because I know that you're working on your paper. So there's a little something I want you to do before class next time, but other than that, I just want you to focus on the paper. So let me go through the updates, and then I'm gonna do some little overview of poetry with some examples down here that I'll do here in class so that you don't have to read them. Sorry, I've been having a sore throat. I don't know if it's allergies or my mom calls it the COVID. My mom's 80, which is hard for me to believe because I don't know. But we FaceTime a couple times a week, so she starts calling it the COVID. I hope that's not oversharing. Hopefully you're laughing. Okay. A few updates before we get into the meat of the class for today. This is an A week, which might surprise you because last week was an A week. They're changing this week to A because they want to try to make sure that there's roughly the same number of A days as B days in the semester. And since they're not rotating Mondays like we normally would, Mondays are getting the short end of the stick. Next Monday is another staff development day. So there are like more B days than A days. So they're trying to even that out over the semester. So this is an A week and next week is an A week. So that means for you that you only have formatives to do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Also, the counseling office announced that they are doing some TSI testing in case you need one of those tests. You obviously don't need the reading or the writing, but if anybody's working on the math, they have some dates here. This is tomorrow and Thursday. Next week they're doing reading, and then the week of the 19th, they're doing math, reading, and writing. So if you happen to need that or you know somebody who needs it, they're doing on-campus TSI testing. So you can have somebody call the counselor, or Amanda Rodriguez in the College and Career Center can probably set you up with that. Are you all on the Google Classrooms for your counselors and the College and Career Center?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. If you're not, you should, because that's where, especially with seniors, that's where they're announcing all of the reps that are coming from the colleges. They've already had UTRGV and I think Texas A&M. Usually the reps come a few times, but if you're waiting for one of those information meetings from the different schools with the reps that come from those schools, they're doing that via Zoom, and they announce them in the College and Career Center Google Classroom. So if you're a senior and you wanted to go to those informational meetings, that's where you'll find out about them. But also, if you're a senior and you're doing your applications, that's a good place to ask the reps if they have any application vouchers for you, because it's not free to apply to colleges, right? It costs $75, $150 application fee for each school. So if you're applying to 4 different schools, that can really add up. So if you go to those sessions, sometimes you can ask the reps if they have, if you qualify for a voucher, and then they'll waive the fee, the application fee. Otherwise, they don't look at your application until you give them the $75 or the $150. So that's just to look at your application. Nothing at college is free. So if you need to, I'm just going to do this just so that everybody has it. Juniors too, you can go to those sessions, I'm pretty sure. You can go to the guidance and counseling website and go to the contact us link right here. And there's a whole document, depending on which counselor you have. Probably at your junior conference, they made you sign into the classroom, I'm thinking. But by counselor, they're all here. So you can look up your counselor, and then you can look up your grade and put in the right classroom code, class of whatever. Also, this is the one for the College and Career Center. So this is where they'll also be updating about testing, whenever they're going to give the ACT, if you need that. A lot of seniors right now are getting ready to retest the ACT. So I think it's in December. There's one, I don't know if it was last weekend or this coming weekend, but then there's another one in December. So if you're not on those, you probably should be on there, because that's the main way that they're communicating. Well, the main way we're all communicating these days. So I got there from the counseling page where it says contact us, and there's a link on this week's updates for that right here. Also, seniors, well, I might as well do this section. I'll go back to grades in a second. Seniors, you should be working on your Apply Texas and your FAFSA. FAFSA opened last Thursday. So you have to do, well, you don't have to, but it's better to do your Apply Texas and submit that before you complete your FAFSA, because the colleges need to have an open application for them to attach your FAFSA information to it. So, but the counselors are sort of expecting that you'll get both of those things done by the end of October. I know they're going to have a financial aid night October 20th. So I'm assuming that the counselors will send messages in Google Classroom about that. But I'm not sure the times. Usually it's like from 5 to 7, where they can help you finalize your financial aid form. Everybody has to do the financial aid, even if you don't think you're going to be getting any money, because lots of people think, oh, well, I'm not going to get anything. It's because most colleges, if they're going to offer you a scholarship, or many other independent scholarships, will ask you for your EFC, estimated family contribution, and you only get that through the FAFSA process. So the reason they do that is because they want to know what your family can contribute. If your EFC is 0, which a lot of people, that's what happens, then lots of times universities will offer scholarships because they want you to come to their school, but they see that maybe financial aid's not going to cover 100%, and they will make up the difference because they really want you at their school based on your application. So it's important to do FAFSA and of course Apply Texas. If you're working on your essays for Apply Texas, then I remember that I did a seminar with little videos to help you through that process. I also will look at your essays for you and give you feedback if that helps you, and sort of conference with you about what I think is going on with your essays and what can help you. I have students all the time who tell me, oh, well, the essay doesn't really matter because I'm already in top 10. And unfortunately, that is not accurate, because that's how they will give you money. So the application is also used for scholarships. So you do want to pay attention to all of those details, and special programs like honors colleges and things like that. So if you need help with the essay, let me know. Juniors, I guess tuck all that away for next year. If you're taking this class as a junior, I do teach an independent study in English class, which is all seniors who have already finished English 4. And we work on all this stuff in class. Like, it's an assignment for them to do their college admissions essay and that sort of thing. So you can think about taking that next year if you want. Anyway, all that stuff is mainly for seniors, but that counselor's website is for anybody. I do want to go back and talk a little bit about grades, because we're starting the second 6 weeks this week, and I want to make sure that it's kind of clear. I know it's in the syllabus, but maybe it's been a while since you read the syllabus. I want to talk a little bit about that, because I did get emails from a couple people yesterday about grades and stuff like that, and I just want to talk about how that works. So I usually have my 6-week grades done ahead of time. I don't work on them really unless there's a couple of little cleanup things I have to do the weekend before grades are due. So grades are usually due on Monday, but I usually have my grades done the week before. I might not upload them until Saturday or whatever, but I usually have them done. So emailing me about a grade when it's almost time to turn in grades is not going to work. You shouldn't wait until the end of the marking period to discover that you don't like what your grade is, because it shouldn't be a surprise. I work pretty hard to make sure that the grade book is updated regularly, because I know how frustrating it can be to have an empty grade book when you go to check your grades. So I do try to keep up to date with them. And so you should know all the time pretty much what your grade is, and also progress reports. So that's the time to come to me and say, hey, I want to know what's going on with my grade. Or maybe you have a goal, right? Like I have students who like want to make all A's, or they want to be eligible, or whatever. That is something you need to keep an eye on and communicate with me if something's happening with your grade that you want to work on. But you can't work on it if you email me the Monday that I already turned in grades. Like there's no work time. So I don't, I hope this doesn't sound bad. I don't look at your averages. I'm teaching a semester course. So I'm thinking about the end semester grade in December. I know you're not. I know you're thinking about your 6 weeks, and you're thinking about, you know, your eligibility, or what, you know, like whatever your little chunks are. But all I do when it's report card time is whatever the grades are in the grade book, I just enter. I don't think about what is the overall average at that time. Same thing, progress reports. Because I'm teaching this class, there are components that go the whole semester. So this is just a segment of that. And so if you've got a certain goal in mind, I think it's good to keep an eye on your grades. And I mean, I want to help you reach your goals. So if you have an issue with your grades, if you see a dip, if you know, like are stuck in an 88 and you really want to push into the 90, then, you know, communicate with me, but communicate with me in time so that I can actually help you do something about it. I don't go back and retroactively give people opportunities to make up grades, and I don't really do extra credit. So what I can do is help you do better on the actual credit things, if that makes sense. I had a bunch of, not a bunch, I had like 3 people that emailed me over the weekend about extra credit. Well, no, you should have done the regular credit. So the only extra credit really is the stuff from the summer. So if you were in the Google Classroom in the summer, there was an extra credit in June, there was one in July, and there was one in August. So the June one is +3 on the average for the first 6 weeks. The July one is +3 on the average for the second 6 weeks. And the August one is +3 on the average for the third 6 weeks. So if you did all 3, then you're going to get plus, like if you have 90, now you have 93. So I don't know. Should have done them, I guess. So anyway, that's about grades. I also should mention that the grades are different between the East grade and the STC grade because the percentages are different, the way that it's weighted. So the grade book at East is set up with a 60-40. So that means that daily stuff, quizzes, that kind of thing is in the minor assessments, which is 60% of your grade. Then tests and projects and papers are in the 40% range in the average on the East grade. So even though they're the same assignments at STC, the breakdown is a little different. So like final drafts of papers together are 40% of the overall grade. So even though the grades are the same, like the actual grade on the assignment will be the same, but the weighting is different. So maybe keep an eye on both grade books a little bit and, you know, kind of see how that's going. Questions about grades? Nobody wants to pop in there about grades? Okay, well, hopefully that makes sense. I'm here to help you reach your goals, but we need to do it in a reasonable fashion. Okay, that's it for updates. Let's move on to Tuesday. Do make sure that you do today's formative. And remember that the papers are due on Saturday. I am looking through papers. I got several over the weekend. I gave feedback on them. I think I have maybe four or five that are stacked up in my inbox for me to look at from overnight and this morning. And so when I'm finished with my Zoom classes, I'm going to sit down and work on those and get those back to everybody. So if you turn one in, you should get it back this afternoon. Or if you turn in your thesis statement, whatever you sent to me, I'm going to go ahead and give you feedback later today. That way you've got some time to work on it and make your improvements before Saturday. But you can ask me questions, you know, through the week if you have questions. What I'm not going to be able to do is go through your entire paper beginning to end. Yesterday was the cutoff for that kind of thing. But if you want to send me your thesis and just get a quick, you know, a quick idea about it, then I'm glad to do that for you. The paper, you're going to turn it in down here. Make sure that you're not using WordPad. You need to make sure that it's a Google, like a DocX, or PDF is probably the safest way to upload to Blackboard. But this is where you will submit it. The assignment page is here. The scoring rubric is here. I want to talk about that scoring rubric a little bit. It's also right here. So now might be a good time, a few days before the finals due, now might be a good time to look at your paper, the way I'm going to look at your paper. And the way I'm going to look at your paper is with these 4 categories: formatting, organization, grammar, and thesis and support. So these are the 4 areas. And so obviously you want to be over here in the exceeds expectations area. I will tell you that the biggest weight is on the bottom one down here. The thesis and support is probably 80% of the grade on the paper, because if you don't have an idea and support for the idea, then you don't really have a passing paper. The other things are important, but they are more like communication elements. So organization and grammar help you communicate your ideas effectively. So thesis and support is by far the heaviest weighted element of the paper. So if your thesis and support is sufficient, then you will most likely pass, unless you have, you know, such horrible grammar that I can't read it and your organization is all over the place. So, you know, if you have good thesis and support, these things aren't going to, they might bring you down in your points, like you might not make an A, but you could still turn in a fine paper with 3 or 4 grammatical errors, you know, kind of okay organization, but maybe there's some places where it's a little disorganized. You'd probably be in, you know, like this range, like a low B or a high, like in a C range. So what some people did over the weekend was they sent me their draft, or sometimes they only had 2 pages of their draft done, like it wasn't a complete essay. And they asked me specifically about their thesis and support because they knew that that was on the rubric. So I gave them feedback specifically on that element and how they were doing with their paper and that kind of thing. And then if I saw that organization was a problem, I would make a comment and make some suggestions about how that could be improved. That's the kind of feedback that I was giving. So you can kind of take that as advice for your own paper. And you might want to take your paper and say, okay, well, where do I think I am on these elements? If I was in Mrs. Ramos's brain, what would I be saying about my paper? I'm a tough grader. I don't know. That's what they tell me. The kids tell me I'm a tough grader. That I'm nice face to face, but I'm a tough grader. And then Mr. Ramos is mean in class. I don't think they really mean mean. I think they just mean he's sometimes blunt, and an easier grader. So I don't know. That's what the kids tell me. He won't let me watch his classes or anything. So I don't know if that's true. Y'all can tell me if you think that's true. But I will tell you, people still come back and have me edit their applications for medical school and, you know, stuff like that. So must be a benefit to it, to having somebody really scour your paper for you. Oh, there's a comment. It's true. Okay. Yeah. That's doing. Well, I've been teaching seniors and he's been teaching juniors for 20 years now. So we've had 20 years of graduates coming through telling me that. So yeah. All right. So that's a side point. All right. So what else was I gonna go to? Anything else? Let me look over here and see if there's anything else for the paper. Yeah, so how do we cite the textbook? Yes, you need to cite your story. You're not using MLA for anything else except like formatting. So your margins and your heading and your header and all that stuff should be set up MLA style. There's a link to it in the instructions. But you do need to put one item on your works cited because you shouldn't be quoting from anywhere else. You shouldn't be using materials from anywhere else. Everything in your paper is your own opinion about that story through whatever lens that you've chosen. But you do need to cite the book. So if you're using something from the textbook, then you're going to, that's weird. If you're using something from the textbook, then you would use this title, Compact Literature, Reading, Writing, Reacting, and the authors are Kersner and Mandel. So you can just go to the inside of this book and get your publication information. If you're using one of the PDFs, then you can just go and find out the publication date. It's probably on Wikipedia or something like that for the other stories. But yeah, you need to do that in a regular MLA format. But there really should only be one thing on your works cited, just that story. All right, if anything else pops up here, I'll get to it before we sign off today. All right, I wanted to do a little gallery walk with the infographics. Over the weekend, you should have submitted your short fiction kind of unit review infographic, and I think they turned out super great. And I would like for everybody to take a minute to go and look at them. If we were in class, I might have people come up and show us their infographics, like on the document camera, and we could see what everybody did. But we're not in class. I know it looks like it. Right there's the document camera. That's where you'd be standing right there. In my classroom, you'd be standing right there doing your presentation. You can imagine. Anyway, click on infographics right here and it will take us to our Padlet. Some people did some awesome work. So I want to give you maybe 5 or 6 minutes to go through and see what different people did for their infographic. And you can see that I've enabled likes and also comments. So if you see one that you think is special or well done, then you can give it a little heart and give your classmates a little bit of feedback. And I'll give you a few minutes. I'm going to turn off my, I'm going to mute my microphone and give you guys a few minutes to look and see what your classmates did on the project. Okay, so you can see everybody kind of chose a different graphic, a different way of organizing. You can see all the little nightingales everywhere. Um, Nobody did 56-0 in this class for their project. It's okay. Anyway, I hope that you found that more enjoyable than, say, like some sort of worksheet or another paper. I'm hoping that you found it interesting to organize your ideas in an infographic method. Hopefully you did. I'll be grading them on Blackboard, so as I'm working on those this week, those grades will start popping up there on Blackboard, and I'll transfer them for the second 6 weeks in the East grade book. Anyway, I just thought it'd be kind of cool to see what other people did. All right, if you go back to Blackboard, then you will see the last thing that we're going to do today is kind of an introduction to poetry. I know that you've read poetry before. I mean, I don't think you can get out of elementary school and middle school, without reading poetry. And I'm sure that you read some when you were in, other grades in high school. But I wanted to talk about poetry in terms of how it's different from other genres. And I also wanted to get through a number of poems so that you would have a few to help you refresh your memory about poetry before next week when I start making assignments to read and do some analysis of poetry. So I thought today I would just share some poems with you. I'm not planning on doing an analysis of them. I just want to really highlight the 4 main elements of poetry that make poetry special and different from other genres of literature. And so I've isolated them here. They are intense emotion. Not that a novel can't have intense emotion, but poems have a sort of immediacy because they're happening in that moment and they're like a short little nugget of a moment. So intense emotion, also compacted and layered ideas. We see that in poetry. In a novel or a short story, the author can extend their ideas for a longer period of time, but a poem is short. So the ideas are compacted and layered. Also, the beauty of the language. Poetry has a musical quality to it that we don't consistently see in other works of literature, other genres. And then poignant meaning. We can get to a theme in poetry because of that compacted quality so much faster than a novel. Like you might read a short story or novel and the theme doesn't come until the very end. But with a poem, that ending happens so quickly because poems are short. So the short nature of the poem makes it gives it a unique place in literature. And so I kind of wanted to do an example of each one of those 4. Maybe you could jot those down in your notes or something, because for each poem, I'm going to kind of want you to notice those things. Where do we have the emotions in this poem? In what way does this poem have, layered ideas? Where do we see the beauty of the language? And what about the poignant meaning? So those are like the 4 touchstones for a poem. I'm going to teach you a different way of like sort of clinically analyzing a poem, in an analytical sort of, academic way. But I think for enjoyment of poetry, we need to look at these 4. So for intense emotion, I decided to share with you today some spoken word poetry. Have you guys heard of spoken word poetry before? Have you heard that term? Anybody familiar with it? Crickets? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay. So spoken word poetry, because I'm going to play a couple of videos that demonstrate spoken word poetry. Spoken word poetry is when the poet writes a poem specifically for it to be performed in front of others. So it's not meant to go in a book, although they do sometimes transcribe them in a written form. The purpose of writing it is so that it can be performed in front of an audience. So the poet has sort of like their intense emotions about their life, their choices, political issues that they're interested in, whatever their topic is, and they're writing it with the mind that they're going to be saying it to a group of people, and then those people are going to be reacting to it. So it's almost like reader response in that way. And for that reason, it is a very intense type of poetry because it's happening in that moment. Usually the speakers are very agitated and, you know, provocative. They usually want to provoke their audience in some way. So they're heightened with that sort of emotion. The first poem I want to share for you that's a spoken word poem is called OCD by Neil Hilborn. It's my favorite of all time that I've ever seen of spoken word poetry. And I'll just give you a little background because one of the issues with spoken word poetry is usually it goes very quickly and it takes a couple of times to hear it before you really get all the words of what they're saying, which is sort of ironic because they're meant to be spoken live and you don't really get a rewind in live, but obviously I have them here on video. So they're here in case you want to rewatch them. But OCD is about, the poet is a young man who has obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's about how he fell in love. So I'm gonna put that one on and I have to change out my AirPods, hold on, and put it on the speaker. I'm gonna play that one for you. Your goal is to listen for the intense emotion, right?
The first time I saw her, everything in my head went quiet. All the tics, all the constantly refreshing images just disappeared. When you have obsessive compulsive disorder, you don't really get quiet moments. Even in bed, I'm thinking, there's not door yet, watch my yet, not door yet, watch my yet. When I saw her, the only thing I could think about was the hairpin curve of her lips, or the eyelash on her cheek, the eyelash on her cheek, the eyelash on her cheek. I knew I had to talk to her. I asked about 6 times in 30 seconds. She said yes after the third one, but none of them felt right, so I had to keep going. On our first date, I spent more time organizing my meal by color than I did eating, fucking talking to her. But she loved it. She loved that I had to kiss her goodbye 16 times or 24 times if it was Wednesday. She loved it took me forever to walk home because there are lots of cracks on our sidewalk. When we moved in together, she said she felt safe, like no one would ever rob us because I definitely locked the door 18 times. I don't want to figure out when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked. When she said she loved me, her mouth would curl up at me. At night, she'd lay in bed and watch me turn all the lights off and on and 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 off and off. She'd close her eyes and imagine the days and nights were just passing in front of me. Some mornings, I'd start kissing her goodbye, but she'd just leave because I was making her late for work. When I stopped at a crack in the sidewalk, she just kept walking. When she said she loved me, her mouth was a straight line. She told me I was taking up too much of her time. Last week, she started sleeping at her mother's place. She told me that she shouldn't have let me get so attached to her. This whole thing was a mistake. But how can it be a mistake that I don't have to wash my hands after I touch her? Oh, it's not a mistake. She was wonderful. Away from me, and I just can't. I can't go out and find someone new because I always think of her. Usually, when I obsess over things, I see germs sneaking into my skin. I see myself crushed by an endless procession of cards, and she was the first beautiful thing I ever got stuck on. I want to wake up every morning thinking about the way she holds her steering wheel, how she turns shower knobs when she's opening a safe, how she blows out candles, 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 blows out. Now, I just think about who else is kissing her. I can't breathe because he only kisses her once. He doesn't care if it's perfect. I want him back so bad. I leave the door unlocked. I leave the lights on.
All right, thoughts? What are your impressions of spoken word poetry? You can put something in the chat. It's different, yeah. But the emotion's obvious, right? You can even hear the audience reacting with their emotions. That's why I say it's sort of like a reader response, because you have that
sort of symbiotic relationship between the writer and the audience. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay, I have two others. I don't think I'm going to get to this third one because it's kind of long, but I do want to share with you this second one so that you can see a different type of spoken word poetry. Obviously, the first one, Neil Hilborn, he's recreating a disorder, and he's also, you know, sort of emotionally invested in it, and it takes an extreme form in that presentation of his poem. But Sarah Lawson has a different take on spoken word poetry in her poem Anne Frank Offers Justin Bieber a Lesson in Humility. So let me give you a little bit of background on this one so that when you listen to it, it sinks in a little bit for you. So I don't know if did you guys read The Diary of Anne Frank when you were younger? Anne Frank was a young woman in the Holocaust. She was a teenager, and she and her family were hiding in the attic of an acquaintance's house for, I don't know, like 2 years or something, so they wouldn't have to go to the camps. And so she wrote a diary the whole time that she was there about her experiences. She didn't make it. They found them, and her diary was left behind. And so we have that diary as a firsthand sort of young person's account of what it would have been like to hide. They had to stay silent all day because they were above a business. And so maybe you read that or maybe you have heard of it. But anyway, the building where they were hiding, there's a couple different families were hiding up there. The building where they were hiding is a museum now. And it has visitors, and there's a guest book. And apparently, Justin Bieber, when he was visiting the area, signed the guest book. And he signed it in a way that was, in some people's view, disrespectful of the memory of Anne Frank and Holocaust, victims. And so the poem is about the poet taking on the persona or the speaker position of Anne Frank. So when Sarah Lawson is delivering the poem, she's imagining that she's Anne Frank talking to Justin Bieber about what he did. So I'm going to play that one for you. Totally different emotions. The emotions are just as strong, but they're just different emotions.
In April 2013, pop singer Justin Bieber visited the home of Anne Frank. In the guest book he wrote, "She was a really great girl. I hope she would have been a believer." Anne Frank offers Justin Bieber a lesson in humility. If there is a God worth praying to that lives in someone's skin, I have already found her inside of me. Don't need your wind-up toy to pray to. I am the girl inside the music box. The only ballerina who pulled a dance from her own captivity and painted the walls with it. Justin, don't enter my home and demand it care about your music. I've already plucked a tune from the gaping wounds in each crack in the paint here, sang a lullaby to the sound of the boots pacing outside. One night before bed, I gathered all the air inside my lungs. When I woke up still breathing, I named this moment my symphony. So great girl might be legacy enough for you. Nobody wanted this girl sitting next to them in school. Nobody wanted to write about what it's like to become girl. Nobody wanted to keep me quiet in their cupboards. Nobody wanted my hands to hold their children's hands. But now everybody wants a piece of my bones
Any reactions to that one? Okay, well, hopefully you can see the power of spoken word poetry. So we look for intense emotion in poems in general. There's another one here to this day. It's about bullying, but it's a little long, so I'm going to skip that one. You can go back and watch it if you want to. The next concept about poetry that we want to keep in mind is that poetry is compacted and layered ideas. The idea that it has to be sort of opened up because the poet has sort of compacted ideas in and condensed them for us to read. The one that I want to share as an example of that is one of my favorite poems of all time by Emily Dickinson. And it's about snow. But the poem doesn't ever say that it's about snow. It just describes snow in such a layered way that it gets to almost every quality of snow in 20 lines, 20 very short lines. So I'm going to read this one for you. And your job is to think about how the poem is condensed and layered description of snow. Emily Dickinson didn't put titles on her poems, so we usually just use the first line of her poems as the title. It sifts from leaden sieves, it powders all the wood, it fills with alabaster wool the wrinkles of the road. It makes an even face of mountain and of plain, unbroken forehead from the east unto the east again. It reaches to the fence, it wraps it rail by rail till it is lost in fleeces. It deals celestial veil to stump and stack and stem, a summer's empty room, acres of joints where harvests were, recordless, but for them. It ruffles wrists of posts as ankles of a queen, then stills its artisans like ghosts, denying they have been. So this one really talks about all the aspects of snow, how it looks falling, how it looks when it's stacking up, how it looks when it is blown onto other objects. And it does it in just such a short space that the ideas are really compacted down. So when we think about analyzing poetry, it's really about opening it back up and taking each little part and seeing what it has to offer us and sort of expanding it. The third element of poetry that I want to draw your attention to today is the beauty of the language. And here I want to use a sonnet by Pablo Neruda. Neruda wrote in Spanish, but this is a translation into English. I do have it in Spanish if anybody wants to read it for us when we get to that. But the beauty of the language is part of poetry, the musical qualities of how it sounds on our ear when we're listening to poetry. And of course, that poetry is written in all languages, so we have to consider that the musicality of the poem can have to do with the language, whatever it was written in.
Better, right? So listen for the musical and beautiful sounds of the language in this poem. I don't love you as if you were a rose of salt, topaz, or arrow of carnations that propagate fire. I love you as one loves certain obscure things secretly between the shadow and the soul. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom but carries the light of those flowers, hidden within itself. And thanks to your love, the tight aroma that arose from the earth lives dimly in my body. I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where. I love you directly without problems or pride. I love you like this because I don't know any other way to love, except in this form in which I am not, nor are you. so close that your hand upon my chest is mine, so close that your eyes close with my dreams. Okay, so you can hear a certain cadence to it, a certain musical quality to the formation of the words, and so that's another quality of poetry. Does anybody want to read the Spanish version for us? Anybody feeling adventurous today? Since it was originally written in Spanish. Well, luckily I have a guest reader, so I just thought I'd give people the opportunity to read it, but we'll listen to this speaker. That's Pablo Neruda. It's not him reading though. Play this, you can hear it. So even in its original Spanish, you can hear the cadence of the language flowing, and it should sound pleasing to your ear. So that's what we look for in poetry. The last one is poignant meaning. So of these four, the fourth thing is that poetry has a way of delivering sort of a life punch at the end or somewhere in the poem where there's a realization or an epiphany that the speaker is presenting to us. And so this last poem that I want to share with you today is called Digging by Seamus Heaney. And it's about generations, and it's also about following in the footsteps of your family and sometimes feeling like you're not. So I want to read that one for you. So try to discern the theme, the poignant idea that's presented here in this poem. It's called Digging by Seamus Heaney. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father, digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the lug, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Once I carried him a milk bottle corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like him. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it. So at the end of this poem, we realize that he's trying to leave a legacy and follow in the footsteps of his ancestors, but he doesn't do farm work. Instead, he's a writer. And so he expands the idea of digging and digging into ideas and digging into concepts and human nature through poetry. So altogether, these 4 things are basically what I'm going to be asking you to think about with the poems that we read and the ones that we analyze. Any questions on those 4 elements of poetry that we see different from other types of literature? Okay, super fun. Okay. So Thursday, remember that you have a formative. Saturday, the paper is due by the end of the day. You do have an assignment for next class period, but I kept it to a minimum because I wanted to make sure that you had time to work on making your paper great. So I do want you to watch a video that I made about how to do the 1, 2, 3 analysis. That's the kind of analysis we're going to do with our poems. And I will teach you how to do it in that video. It's a little bit longer of a video, but I'm going to go through the poem. It's just like Lead and Sieves, the one that I went through about snow. So I'm going to go through and show you and demonstrate how to do a 1, 2, 3 analysis, because that's how I'm going to ask you to analyze all the other poems next week. I want you to practice using one of these poems that's listed here. 2 of them are in the book and 2 of them are on PDF. So once you watch the video about how to do a 1, 2, 3 analysis, then you can go ahead and choose one of these. They're all about poetry. You can choose one to do the 1, 2, 3 analysis for practice. And then we'll pick up with poetry together next Tuesday. Any questions on that assignment? I didn't make another reading assignment from the textbook because I figured you'd be busy with your paper. Let me go over here and see if there's anything else. Oh, there's another question here. Conclusions. Okay, so this is another question for the paper. What would the conclusion consist of? Is it simply tying up everything we have mentioned in the body and restating? Yes, usually. Sometimes though, in a conclusion that is in a philosophical paper like this one, it's philosophical because you're taking on the lens of whatever you've chosen to examine the paper. You can also add to your conclusion, besides doing those things, you're tying everything up and restating the thesis, you can also have like an insight, right? So if we look at Yellow Wallpaper through a feminist lens, what's the bottom line of what we can learn? What do we learn about human nature, or what do we learn about that time period, or what do we learn about male-female relations or oppression, or whatever it is that you're talking about? So you could take it to the level of theme in the conclusion. I think that would make a really tidy conclusion. So the papers that just sort of repeat the thesis statement, they're okay. I mean, there has to be C papers, right? Doesn't have to be, but there usually are. But yeah, if you can take what your observations from the paper show us about life, you know, that's the whole point of literature, is to examine it in the bigger lens of, you know, life and human nature. So you could do that. What else? How is your day going? It doesn't have anything to do with the paper. It's okay. I gotta say that this is the class that's least involved in the lesson, which makes it a little tough for me, but you know, I can soldier on. But yeah, so my day would be better if it was interactive, but you know, I know how it is. It's kind of weird with the Zoom situation. Maybe when we're together in class, we can make up for it. Hopefully. I think it's about trust too. To me, it makes it, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this. In a way, it's kind of like you have to trust that your teacher is, you know, when you express yourself in class, you have to trust that that's going to be received well, and it's going to, you know, be a productive conversation. And sometimes it takes a while to build that. But that's what I think of when I think people aren't participating. I feel like it's because they don't trust me, and that maybe I'm going to be mean, or, you know, say something cruel or something like that. I don't know. It's probably not true, but that's what my mind does. I'm not trying to guilt you into participating, because I know that you just might not feel like it. Maybe they just put all of the introverts into one class. That's a possibility, but if we were in class, it would be a different dynamic, I think. So I try not to take it personally. That's how my day's going. Hopefully you guys are having a good day too. The weather's starting to be nicer, so I don't know. Maybe that's gonna have some autumn weather. Anything else about the paper before I cut y'all loose?
No, I've been doing pretty good progress on it. Almost done with it.
Okay. Well, if something comes up, just let me know. You can send me an email or the voice thing or.
So, sorry, I've been muted. I've been like eating.
I can't, you're eating. Oh, okay. Yeah, see, that's the thing. I do that in meetings all the time too. Like Monday we have staff development and they literally just talk to us and don't give us any opportunities to like give any feedback or anything. So literally we're just listening. It's like watching a TV show. I feel like it's like watching a TV show, right? We're so used to watching episodes of whatever on Netflix that it's kind of like your Zoom lesson is just another episode that you're binging on your TV show. So I feel like I'm the TV show sometimes. I don't know. But I get it. I understand. I'm not mad about it. Anyway, I guess that's it for today. If something comes up with your paper between now and Saturday, communicate with me about it. I'll do my best to help you. And I'm looking forward to some awesome papers on Saturday. All right.
All right.
Hopefully y'all have a good rest of the week. Bye.
Bye, Miss.
Bye, Miss.
Bye, Ms. Ramos.
Bye. Have a good day.